In this segment, we're going to talk about MiniMEs and how we can use them. MiniMEs can be used in multiple ways. They can be used as upstream MEs, they can be used as midstream MEs, and they can be used as downstream MEs. Now, these MiniMEs are very flexible because of how we've broken them down. Instead of taking an ME, which would have 4 keyers, when I need to do something like a 2-box or a chroma key, this is going to allow us a lot more flexibility. So when we look at assigning the MiniMEs, the first thing we want to do is put them on our panel. So MiniMEs are like a regular ME. They have a preset bus, they have a background bus, and then they have 2 keyers. And you can do cuts and dissolves, you can transition them, and you can select them as, for example, a re-entry or a re-entered source. So first, we want to make sure that we assign them to the panel. So we go Menu, we go Config, we go Bus Map, and of course, I scroll to the button where I want to apply them. And so here on button number 21, I have MiniME 1 on the primary side and MiniME 3 on the shifted side. On button 22, I have MiniME 2 on the primary side and MiniME 4 on the shifted side. And that's just how I chose to set up and configure mine. Now, I may have wanted to change this since now we have a Carbonite black. I actually have an extra ME that I haven't mapped. So we'll just quickly realign everything the exact same way we would have done it before. So MiniME 1 and then MiniME 3. Then we go MiniME 2, MiniME 4. And on 22, I'm going to put ME1. And on its shifted side, I'm going to put the main preview in case I want to assign that out an aux bus. And then 23, we'll put ME2, and on its shifted side, it has program. So now I've got my 2 MiniMEs, I got ME1, ME2. So I have all, and then the shifted side, 3 and 4. So these are a lot of re-enterable upstream MEs. Essentially, I now have a 7 ME switcher because I have 3 full 4-keyer MEs and then 4 of these 2-keyer MEs. All right, so now that we've assigned the cross points, we want to assign a way to delegate our rows because we need to be able to jump between MEs and MiniMEs. Now, by default, these come as aux bus keycaps. But in the installation kit, there are a bunch of extra transparencies so that you can replace these caps. So we're going to go into our user menu, hit next, and you'll see user select buttons. So we click on user select buttons. And now what you have is something that's going to tell you row 1:1, meaning row 1, top row, this is row 2. If I had a 3ME, row 3 would be the next one. So top row is row 1 all the time. And the first button. So this is assigned to MiniME 1. And then the second button, we assign to MiniME 2, 3, 4, and then we put down multiscreen 1 and 2. Now multiscreen, which we'll cover in a little bit, uses the MiniMEs. And so when you enable multi-screen modes, you are using MiniMEs to create these multi-screens. So this is how you can delegate to the control at that higher level. And you can have up to 2 of these multi-screens. So then I made button 7 an ME1 quick select and button 8 the ME2 quick select. Now, of course, if I was holding down one of these buttons, the row does delegate. I can jump to any MiniME. So you don't have to have them all physically mapped to a button, which you'll see what we've done here on row 2. So on row 2, the first 7 buttons are aux 1 through 7. And the 8th button is ME3. Since ME3, I always want to be able just to hit that button and get back to ME3. But if I hold it, I can delegate any MiniME to my row. I can delegate any multi-screen to my row. But to get back to ME3, I don't have to hold it because I made this one be the quick toggle, so it's assigned to 3 all the time, so that now I can get back to my program ME pretty quick. All right, so now that we've mapped these keys, now we can start leveraging the power of the MiniME. So if I look at MiniME 1, and maybe what I wanted to do was some type of a chroma key effect. So on my MiniME, maybe we'll just look at it in preset for us. So we'll select, first we will make sure that MiniME 1 is cleared out, select it in preset, so it starts off black. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to try to find something to use as a background source. So let's go Media Store 1, and what we'll do is we'll jump to, you know, a radar background. Great. Now I want to apply, in this case, if we look at the multi-viewer, we're going to use satellite 2. So on my panel, I go to key 2 where I want to do my chroma key. Select chroma key, take satellite 2, and go ahead and just pop it on. I can see it. Of course, what we want is green as the primary, and hit initialize. So now we've got that nice initialized chroma key. So we'll just run the initialization again. There it is. You can see we got a great chroma key. Everything is wonderful. So of course, you can easily take that to error. As it's just like an ME, it is now a re-entry. So this MiniME now is applying my chroma key for me. And maybe I have another graphic that I wanted to put up from a remote site or something. So we're going to take MiniME 2, and we're going to put, say, satellite 1 in MiniME 2, and we needed to put CG 1 for its lower third. So when we look at MiniME 2 on the panel, and first we'll go to key 1, and we'll make sure that it is on black. So here we have our lower third that's always keyed in, so I don't have to worry about bringing the key in down in the program preset area, right? It's always, that lower third is always in. We can go between our chroma key and that element, all like they're just another ME. But since I don't need all the resources of a full ME, we're not wasting it. ME1 is still available for a more complex scene, as is ME2, these more complex scenes that require more keyers. So these utility MEs become very flexible for us to utilize for these types of portions of the production. Now, the way the timing window works is you have a MiniME slot before ME1, you have a MiniME slot between ME1 and ME2, you have another MiniME slot between ME3, and then you have a downstream MiniME slot. And the purpose of this is a timing window allowing cascading. So you can't put a MiniME into a MiniME and then into ME1, but you can have multiples in the same timing window. So what that means, for example, what we want to do is set up a 2-box on ME1 that is taking both of those two MiniMEs. So if I go to ME1 and we say, okay, well, I'm going to just use the color background, I guess, as a background. And in key 1, we want to do a DVE, and we want MiniME 1 in it. So now I can squeeze that back and position it somewhere on the screen. And doing a copy because it's quicker, destination, source. So it copied in that key. So now we have the key in ME1, and I go ahead and cut that second one on air, change its source to be MiniME 2, and of course it's on top because it's a higher layer keyer. So we're just going to go ahead and move that 2-box over to here. So now it's easy for me to cut to my 2-box, right? Put MiniME 1 in preset. Now I can cut out to that chroma key, and then maybe we're going to go straight back from it to that, and then go to ME1 all on in the 2 box. And so again, normally you would have had to have done this in a 3 MEs, because you would have had to have done the 2 box on ME3 and done the chroma key in ME1 and done the OTS with the lower third inside of ME2, or you would have had to play program preview tricks and hidden it and tried not to accidentally touch the transition area. So the flexibility of using MiniMEs as utility MEs for smaller effects becomes very valuable. So also when we look at our panel, you can see that MiniMEs also have a memory system. So if I wanted this stored, I can simply store it to the MiniME just like I would any effect. So I go to MiniME 1 and I'm going to store that to 1 as well. So now if we clear out our MiniMEs and just set MiniME 1 black, and let's just store that as memory 0 for now. Go to MiniME 2, clear it out, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to store that to memory 0. All right. So ME1, we also want to store this to memory 1 as well. And so now, from our panel, if I wanted to recall all of that as one effect, so we have camera 2 on air, and I want to recall it all up as an effect, I simply could go and say on the panel, I want to recall ME1, MiniME 1, MiniME 2. I'm in bank 0, so I want memory 1, and you can see it's lit up, letting me know that something is stored there. So we go ahead and we select that. And now on my panel, right, I select ME1 in preset. You can see that there it is in preview. Now, there's that, and there's that. So as you can see, we can store all these elements into the memory. Now, I defaulted my media store, so it goes back to whatever the loaded default is. In this case, it was the helicopter. As part of that same memory, again, covering it more under the attributes section, but as part of that same memory, we could have stored it so that it would have recalled our weather map because it was in the media store. Normally, we'd be going to a weather computer. But let's say, general, our media stores are always going to recall. So when we go to the store side, we'll go to MiniME 1, where we did the background, and we'll go back to that radar image. So here, when we were storing this, we should have come in on the store side, and we should have said, make sure to remember to recall media 1. So now when I store that back over top of itself to 1, enter, now it'll make sure to include that as part of the attribute. So if we go to the panel, we say, okay, recall 1 and 1 and 2, and we say go to 0, so it clears them all out. So now, of course, when we look in preview and we recall 1, it's going to recall those elements. And again, because the higher ME is being recalled and it does not remember media store 1, it overrides media, the MiniME's recall of the media store. If I just recall it on its own, it would put it in. So there's an understanding of attributes. So I highly recommend you watch the attributes section to understand how the hierarchy works. The hierarchy is MEs, multi-screens, MiniMEs. So had we not included ME1, if we just do MiniMEs 1 and 2, so just MiniMEs 1 and 2 on this recall, then when they come back, of course, we get the correct weather map. And that's because the MiniME properties are allowed to override the ME. Had we just had ME1 included, and then we go from 0 to 1, again, we get that helicopter in there because ME1 is saying don't change media store 1. So it's pretty straightforward in how the hierarchy works, but it's always good to remember to double check your memories before using them. All right, so there we were using them as midstream and upstream MiniME effects. Now let's put one into a downstream scenario. So let's take MiniME 4 and let's have it be, for example, our in-house system L-bar, or if I'm a 24-hour channel that runs inside of an L-bar without requiring another downstream device that will squeeze back program. Because we still want to be able to operate the switcher normally and not have our L-bar be basically key 4 and then having to do something funky with the background buses. So how do we do this? Well, I'm going to take MiniME 4, and in key 1 we're going to do a DVE key, and we're going to put program into that key. So now when we look at MiniME 4, which is on our multi-viewer, but it's in a lower section, so let's just go ahead and replace the preview window for you. So we're just going to replace the preview window with MiniME 4. MiniME 4. Okay, so we'll do that. So now when we cut program on, we have our DVE box of whatever's in program. Now in key 2, what we're going to do is we're going to select CG2 because CG2 is where we've got our L-bar running, and we're going to key that. And so we've got our overlay. So we'll go ahead and go back to key 1, and we'll make and if I make it a color background, makes it real easy to see where I'm at. All right, so I now have squeezed back my program. It's sitting nicely inside of that L-bar area. So again, nothing is being cut off, and program is in our L-bar system. So here, MiniME 4 has been shifted into the downstream location simply because program has been re-entered. So because we put program into this key, now if I was to try on the panel to select MiniME 4, you'll see that it won't let me do it. And that's because there is a re-entry loop that is blocking it. I can't even select it on the preset bus if I wanted to. And currently, MiniME 3 also will not select, because if I go and I look at it, it previously has program inside of key 1. Now, as soon as I change that off, put something else in key 1, now you'll see that I can come down here and I can select MiniME 3. So it doesn't require some configuration or setup for where they go. They're automatically going to jump into their timing slots based on how you re-enter sources into them. And so now that those are re-entered, we have no problem, we can move ahead. So the other example is midstream, where it's in between or it has multiple things re-entered. So what we'll do now is we'll take MiniME 3 and we'll put MiniME 1 into it, or re-entered into it, so to speak. So now that it has MiniME 1 inside of it, and we'll change that window back to preview so we can see what we're doing. So now we've got preview in our multi-viewer. So now that we've got MiniME 1 re-entered in the MiniME 3, I can still take it in preview. And then inside of it, we might be doing something more. Like we're also taking and adding an OTS on top of that graphic. Plus in key 2, maybe we're adding that lower third CG as well. So we'll get rid of it from program so we don't see it anymore. And we'll go into that key 2 and we'll add CG1. And now we're layered. So now we've got our OTS graphic. And maybe we should just put CG3 so it looks like a graphic OTS. We've got our composited layering, and we've got our other lower third. So we've got all these layers that we've applied. And maybe this isn't where I'd put the OTS because I want it behind them. So I would have gone to MiniME 1, and we would have done the layering of that DVE key, right? And we would have done this behind him using the MiniME. So now, of course, this could be like a little promo ad, whatever it is, but now it's behind him. So you have all this layering ability, and because it's now midstream, you're still able to take it to air on your program output, just like other MEs. So that's your combination of how we put these two together to use them as mid, down, and even primary streams. So before the MEs, between MEs, into one another, into program, and of course, completely downstream of program so that you can do things like an L-bar system. All right, so the final way that we can use MiniMEs is in what we call multi-screen mode. So we're going to change our layout and go to just looking at the MiniMEs on their own, and so that we can see them nice and big. And let's just make sure to clear out our other MEs. So we're going to free up our MiniMEs. So now what we want to talk about is how we can use multi-screen in the MEs, in the MiniMEs. So now if we come and we look at our dashboard and we go to multi-screen to set up our configuration. So what I want to do is start off with multi-screen 1. So you can have up to 2 multi-screens because you have 4 MiniMEs. However, you can't do anything with multi-screen 2 if your multi-screen is larger than 2, meaning you need at least 2 to make a multi-screen. Well, I can only have 2 multi-screens if I'm doing 2 MiniMEs in one and 2 in the other. So let's start with a double horizontal. So this is going to automatically use MiniME 1 and MiniME 2. And if I enable background DVEs, now what's nice is it applies 2 DVEs to that background for me. And so now, as I go to my multi-screen and I perform transitions, it's able to scale that video for me across these 2 outputs. So now these large dual projector screens or large LED walls that are larger than 1920 by 1080 resolution, we can now scale video across them as well as apply video across them. In the case of something like a scoreboard system, where I'm using these large LED scoreboards for in-stadium, in-venue, now they're no longer separate sections. It's one giant video wall. So I might want that background DVE to be off because we might use a source. And so what we see here is I'm using my background. I'm using this CG, which is giving me my pillars for my sides. Because we're actually going to use key 1 and put our program into key 1. So now you're going to be placing this video so that it's across the space. Now, program works just like program would work. And we may end up building a couple of effects so that we have different layouts and different scenes to do with this. So the multi-screen works in conjunction with the MiniMEs to control them from top down. So if I go and I'm going to store an effect here, and I'm going to say this is my standard position, but we'll want to use effects dissolve, and I'm going to make this my standard position, so starting position of 0. Click enter. So now I could take that DVE and we could slide it all the way over to the right. And that would be my position. So we intentionally built this graphic board this way because we knew we wanted to be able to have all the information, whether it's right or left. But we don't want to have to use DVEs and other keyers to chop it up and pull it apart. So this is a little bit of one of the events that we can do. So I'm going to store that to 1 on my multi-screen, and then we're going to go ahead and move that DVE across to the other thing, the other side, and call that position 2. So store that to 2. So now we can easily recall these memories and position it wherever we want. And then using the media stores or external graphics servers, we could take it one step further and use that other layer in key 2 to run a wipe that's going to go across the entire screen, so as to wipe and then reveal a different layout, or even potentially a large where we take the entire screen full. So again, to do full would be as simple as saying I'm going to make another position, and so that position is going to be full screen. We store that to 3. So now we've got our different positions, right? And I can always override and say, just go full, just go back. Or don't override and allow it to perform its functions exactly how it was programmed to move into those positions. Because we use the dual in dashboard, you can see that now multi-screen is available. So this is useful if I've got a couple of different 2-screens on-set monitors, or dual projectors, or live event iMag with dual screens. This is our means to be able to get all of that information and get it onto the screen. So now I could set up a second one, and you'll see now that one is using 3 and 4. So multi-screen 2 uses 3 and 4, and as I cut on it, I see the stretch and the go across. Now, one of the other items that we have to talk about is our substitutions. So especially in an iMag type environment or a dual screen on-set monitor, I may have sources that have multiple outputs. So I may have a server that has multiple channels, and I'll be playing back a pixel accurate across all the screens. So here I built a clip that's going to have multiple channels, and what you'll see is that under substitution, we've been able to tell it when this source is selected, I want you to tile it across all of these screens. So right now on multi-screen 2, if I select any of the servers, so if I select server 1, right, what we're going to see in the video is when I select that, it tiled it, and it put channel 3 on MiniME 3 and channel 4 on MiniME 4, because this is a double wide clip. So now it doesn't scale anything. So it's automatically cutting the DVEs in and out of the scaling process based on input rules that you have created. All right, so if we take this one step further and we look at multi-screen, and now what we want to do is we want to make that full quad out of all 4 MiniMEs. So we select that and we click yes. So now it's applied that full quad. Now, when would I or wouldn't I want to use these background DVEs? So if I was doing something where all my background sources are going to be full raster, or they're going to use substitution tables anyway, I could always just turn off the DVEs so it doesn't reserve any there. However, if I'm going to have some sources that I'm going to need to scale across all 4 screens, then I have to turn on the background DVEs so that it can apply them to the background for me. So now when we go and we look at the multi-screen, we can see that it is now scaled across all 4 screens, our one CG source. And if we were to mix to a camera, we can see that that 1080 camera has gone full frame. Of course, our server was told to do a substitution. So now when we transition to our server, of course, you're going to have those 4 separate tiles because the server would be outputting all the information out of 4 spigots to get our pixel accurate representation. So multi-screen allows me this flexibility to control these multiple outputs like I would control an ME, and then dictate to it the substitution or rules table as to what scales and what tiles. So again, you still have your key layering. You'd still be able to have 4 more channels of DVE because, again, the 4 channels are being used on the background, so you still have 4 more channels in the system. And you have 1 more key layer where, in this case, I could have an expression, especially under tessera control, where I've got 4 channels of key and fill being sent to it that can drive across the entire raster. So this is very useful for us where I've got these, large screens, and now with expression and expression tessera, I can frame accurately have a 4K display across, say, 2 machines. So as you can see, multi-screen and MiniMEs are extremely powerful. They're very easy to set up, and if there are any questions about it, please feel free to send them in to us. As well, if there's any subjects you'd like us to cover, please send those as well to switchers@rossvideo.com. Thanks for watching, and have yourself a great day.